Sure is good to see everyone today. If you have your Bibles, turn with me to Colossians chapter 3, verse 23. Colossians 3:23. So, this week and next week we're going to do a little mini-type series on work. And this week we're going to talk about work as worship. And next week we're going to talk about how not to worship work. If that makes any sense. Colossians 3:23 is where we'll be today. Let's open in a word of prayer as you turn there. Father God, I just thank you for this day, and I thank you for this church and for everyone that's here today, Father. And I pray that as we spend time in your word and studying your word, that you'll help us to learn more about you and your will, Father. Help us to grow closer to you and be better stewards of your word. And I pray, Father, that you would be glorified by this time here, and that we would be a light in this community that shows your love. We just thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. One time, Boots, I heard him say it, but that pretty much if somebody's in King County, they do work of some sort. Even if somebody's retired or close to retired, they still are hard-working individuals, and there's not a person in King County that's not a worker. And so I know that as we start this little mini-series on work, that this applies to everyone, because everyone here works. As a veterinarian and a dad and a pastor, I feel like all the time I'm just busy and got lots to do. And I know that I'm not the only person who feels that way, and that almost everyone here puts in more hours than there are in a day. And so I know that hopefully this sermon will be applicable to everyone here. I've heard it said that at least half your life, if not maybe even 2/3 of your life, will be spent at work or doing whatever your occupation is. And so work is a big part of our lives. And so I wanted to take some time to see what the Bible had to say about work, how we work, and just the big picture of how we spend our life. So let's read Colossians 3:23. It's a nice short verse. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men. So keep your finger here today. We're going to flip around to some other verses, but we'll keep coming back to this verse. But I want to break down this verse and see what we can learn from it. So it starts off by saying, whatever you do. So this applies to your entire life, this verse is fixing to follow. Whatever you do, this applies. Some people try to split their life up into little nice, neat categories. So some people have their Monday through Friday life, and whatever their occupation is, they behave completely different at work than on the other days of the week. So you have your Monday through Friday life, and then you have your Friday night, Saturday life, and then you have your Sunday life. And some people even do, sadly, combine Sunday in the, from the work week to the fun part of the week. Some people throw Sunday in on that and skip out on the church and just throw out the fourth commandment. But regardless, it seems like it's real easy to kind of categorize your life into two parts of the Christian life and your secular life. You have your church friends and you have your work friends. You have your work clothes and you have your church clothes. You have, and it's real easy to have that divide, and you behave and talk a certain way at church, but then the rest of the week you don't behave and talk the same way. And you got to kind of know the type of person I'm talking about, because it's easy to identify. Having a 3-year-old, it's vocabulary, I've learned, is an important thing, not just in that they repeat everything you say, but also in the words you use, and words that have double meaning, because they don't get it, and all of a sudden it's confusing to them because you said it one time and it means this. But also trying to define words has been tough. And here recently, I don't remember, we were talking about your testimony. We were trying to tell him about your testimony. And he's like, well, what does testimony mean? And so I was trying to come up with a description of what your testimony is. And I think that little Right Now Media video that we watched previously is a good way to sum it up, because whenever your work or your life affects other people's view of God, that's your testimony. Whether it's a good testimony or in that video, a bad testimony. You can have a good testimony, you can have bad testimony, but how you act, how you live, what you do at work, how you interact with friends and employees, if you're sitting there claiming to be a Christian and then you behave in a different way, that will affect their view of God. So that's your testimony. And so this little phrase, whatever you do, that applies to all areas of your life. Another way to word it is a verse you're all familiar with, 1 Corinthians 10:31, and it words it this way. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God. So literally, even eating, drinking, whatever you do, it should all be for God's glory. Back in Colossians 3:23, the next phrase is, whatever you do, work heartily. So I want to split those two words up separately, work and heartily. So work, from the very beginning, God created us to work. Even while in the Garden of Eden, God created Adam and Eve to work. We see in Genesis 2:15, he says, the Lord God took man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to keep it. And that was even before the fall. So right from the beginning, God had intended us as humans to work. God also gives us instructions or a template on how to work right from the beginning as well. In Genesis 1:28, he says, and God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and of the birds of the air and over every living thing that moves on the earth. So there's a lot in that verse that I just read and a lot we can learn from it. So to start off with, it says, as husbands and wives, be fruitful and multiply. Women, can I get a witness that raising kids is hard work? That is a full-time job. Being a mom is definitely a job title. It also says we are to subdue the earth. Whenever I hear that phrase, I think of, farming, mining, oil, all the use of the long list of the natural resources that we've utilized over time and keep discovering all the different things that God has created for us to utilize and use as technology and just, as time advances, it's amazing the resources and things we can use God's creation for. It says we are also to have dominion over the fish, the birds, and the animal. I think obviously in our community of ranching and cowboying, livestock production, all the many ways we have dominion over the animals, not just training horses for riding, using cattle for beef and food, but also leather and wool from sheep and clothing and just all the many ways that we have dominion over animals and utilize them for our good. So from the very beginning, first I meant to make a note. I looked up that word dominion, and I can't say the Greek word, so I'm just going to tell you the strong word if you're interested in it, but it's 7287, and it means to exercise operative power. So to be in control of the operations of the animals, to use them accordingly. It means to have authority. It is also people's God-ordained relationship with the created world around them. I just thought that gave a little more insight to the word of having dominion over the animals and the birds and the fish. From the beginning, to summarize all that, we are told that we're supposed to raise up our kids. We're supposed to care for this planet, and we're supposed to care for the animals that are under our care. And we see even with Adam and Eve that they passed this on to their kids. Cain was a farmer, and Abel was a rancher. Right from the beginning, they instilled this work ethic in their children. And actually, from the very beginning, God demonstrated, even before all that, God demonstrated work that He is a worker as well. Genesis 2:2-3 says, and on the seventh day, God finished His work that He had done, and He rested on the seventh day from all His work that He had done. So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it, God rested from all His work that He had done in creation. So God gave us an outline for how we should also work in terms of scheduling. So He worked for 6 days, and then He rested on the seventh. And He very clearly set that as a pattern for us to follow. And if we doubted that that was a pattern, He flat out says it multiple times in the Scripture and in the Ten Commandments, because He blessed the seventh day. And He said it's supposed to be a holy day, a day of rest, a day of remembrance, a day that you glorify Me and remember Me. It should not just only be a day of physical rest, because the Scripture is clear it needs to be a day of physical rest also, but it also needs to be a day of spiritual rest, where you reconnect with the Creator. And if we leave Him out of that, we'll miss out on the full benefits of the physical rest. The Bible has a lot to say about work, and I could go on for days, but you probably don't want me to. I looked it up. The word work is used 365 times in the Bible. The word works is used 184, worked 40, worker 25, workers 23, working 27, workman and workmanship 21. So that's 685 uses of the base word work. So if you ever want to study working, there's a lot in the Bible about work. But back to Colossians 3:23. Let's see how we are to work. So it says, whatever you do, work heartily. So we're supposed to work heartily. That word in Greek is actually two separate words. Like I said, I'm not even pretending to know Greek. So it's word 1537 and 5590. 1537 is the beginning of the word, and it denotes an origin or a place where emotion or action proceeds. So to work heartily, that word heartily implies the origin, the place that began the action. And then obviously 5590 refers to your heart, your soul, the life. We talked about spirit and soul last week, but it's the life in you, the characteristic, the personality that's within you. So our work as Christians, it should flow from our heart, which obviously our heart should be filled with Jesus. It should be filled with love, with purity. And so our motives and our intentions, where that originates, they should be pure. We should be showing that in our heart and in our work. And so people should see what's on our heart based on how we work every day. Whether you're a good, productive worker that is respectful and obeys your boss and gets with it, or are you one that is avoiding and lazy and tries to and disrespectful. All of that stems from your heart, because your actions are preceded by what's in your heart. So now remember that as we go through all this, this sermon is applicable to everyone. And I do mean everyone, because kids, even, listen up. If you're in school, this applies to schoolwork, homework, that sort of thing. Even if you're not in school yet, it applies to your chores that your parents are asking you to do, your family duties. It applies to the kids even, because that's where you're at right now, and that's the work that God has for you. That's your job, whether it's being in school and learning or listening to your parents and obeying them. So you should listen and obey, and you should do it heartily, from your heart. Moms, for example, raising your children, changing diapers, not sleeping, being pulled in all the directions. That is the work that God has for you right now. And that is what we should do heartily, out of our heart. It should flow. Everyone else, employees, employers, cowboys, veterinarians, technicians, interns, teachers, grandmas, grandpas, whatever stage of life you're in, that's where God has you. That's what work you're doing. And so we should do it heartily. I also know that this applies to everyone, because if you look at the context of Colossians 3:23, specifically verses 18 through 22, Paul just gets done addressing husbands, wives, children, mothers, fathers, bondservants, which is, the way I look at the bondservant verses, is employees. So this applies to everyone. So it says, whatever you do, so everything you do in life, we should work heartily as for the Lord and not for men. So as for the Lord and not for men, that's a pretty clear phrase of what it implies and what it means. But no matter what our work is, no matter what our job is, no matter what task we're assigned, what project we're working on for the day, we're to work as if God was our boss, because He is. We're to work as if God was watching us work, like He was right there, because He is. How many of you, if you stopped and thought about that on a daily basis, would change how you work, would change your work ethic, would change your work quality, would change your work behavior? And what I mean by behavior is things like your testimony we talked about earlier. How are your actions influencing those around you's view of God? You know, are you complaining? Are you gossiping? Are you avoiding what the boss said to do? Are you being lazy? Are you all of those things are a bad testimony, because they're skewing people's view of God. The world is watching, and so is Satan, unfortunately, because when we try to decide, I'm gonna do good, I'm gonna have a good testimony, I'm gonna try to influence others' view of God in a positive way. Well, as soon as you do that, Satan starts attacking you. People start dragging you down. And just unfortunately, the nature of things, it takes a really long time of consistently having a good testimony before anyone ever notices. But if you have one bad day of a bad testimony, by golly, everyone notices. And so it's important to be consistent in that, be faithful. We are to work with our whole heart, with pure motives, with good intentions, and all of that is to be for the glory of God and not for men. We shouldn't be out to get praises, and we shouldn't be out to get raises. Not that getting praised and getting raises are a bad thing, but that shouldn't be our goal. Our goal should be to point others to God, to glorify God. It's so easy to hunger for that acknowledgement from a boss or fellow employee, from a friend or a fellow mom or a fellow cowboy. It's so easy in today's culture to live for the likes and the thumbs up of social media approval. You want those views, you want people to love what you're doing, and you want that support. It's so easy to crave that affirmation in what you're doing that you're forgetting why you're doing it and what your testimony is ultimately doing. That phrase, "and not for men," alludes to the verse that sits prior to verse 23 here, Colossians 3:22. It says, "Bondservants, obey in everything those who are your earthly masters, not by way of eye service as people pleasers, but with a sincerity of heart, fearing the Lord." Like I talked about, obviously we're in a free country, we don't have bondservants, praise the Lord. But this verse to me applies to us still because we're all employees. We all work for somebody. And so anyone who is working or has a boss, this still applies to them. And I think that the key points are still true and still applicable. We are to obey our earthly masters. And how are we to do that? It gives us 3 important and practical things we can do. So first, not with eye service as people pleasers. Let's be honest, we've all done it. As soon as the boss walks in the room, you start working harder. As soon as the boss is not in the room, you quit working as hard. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. Everyone's done it. Everyone knows the people who are really prone to doing it. But we can't forget that God is ultimately our boss. And God is also omnipresent. He's always there watching us. So He knows we're not going to get away with it. And so we need to work on a daily basis, not to be out to please people with eye service when you're in eyesight of the boss, but we need to be working with our best, with our whole heart, with pure motives all the time to honor God. Secondly, we need to work with sincerity of heart, like we talked about earlier, working heartily. And people can tell if you're working with your whole heart. They can tell if your heart is in it, if you have the passion and the drive, and even if it's a task that you don't love or don't want to do, you can still do it to honor God and do it with your whole heart. Because as we've seen, you can have a good testimony and bad testimony from your actions. Third is to fear the Lord. Everyone knows the verse, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. But how can we apply that to our work? Or do we apply that to our work? Do we do everything, and as this verse says, whatever you do you fear the Lord in that? Do you ever stop and think about when you're working, am I fearing the Lord in how I'm working, in my productivity, in my work ethic, in my behavior? Am I fearing God in this? So what does it mean to fear the Lord? To be in awe of His glory and majesty. To not forget the rightful place that God is in control, that we are here to honor Him and glorify Him. It should be a mindset, it should be a heart attitude that flows from us. And it should be seen in how we walk, how we talk, how we live, how we bear fruit, and in how we work. So as we wrap up, to me there are 3 ways that people often approach work. First, there's the type of people that are in survival mode or forced labor mode. Meaning, they're only working because they have to. You know, they're doing it for the security. Because obviously if you work, you get paid, and then you can support your family, pay your bills, and you can tell that your heart's not in it. You're doing it just because you have to, you paycheck to paycheck, your heart's not in it. And those kind of people are really classically seen by dragging their feet a lot, complaining, venting. Their heart's just not in it. Their work is not outstanding, not God-honoring type work. The second type of person is the person who worships work, or the workaholic. They have no work-life balance. Their identity's in their job and their title. Family and God often take a back seat. And that kind of person is what we'll talk about next week. Whenever I said that this week is worship, work as worship, and next week is not to worship work. But both kinds of approaches to work, whether you drag your feet and your heart's not in it, or whether you worship work and it's your idol and it's your everything, they miss the heart of the gospel, and they miss the heart of Colossians 3:23. Because as we see in Colossians 3:23, the way we work should be a form of worship to God. We should use every opportunity in life, including how we work, to point others to God. Since it takes up such a large percentage of our day and of our lives, our work ethic should be just a mirror reflecting others to God. In order to honor Him, to glorify Him, our attitudes and actions, everything we do should point to Him. And this applies to everyone, like I said, children, moms, dads, husbands, wives. Colossians 3:23, whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men. So this week, my challenge for you is to view your work as your holy calling. Don't separate church from Monday through Saturday. Don't separate Christianity from your secular life. Get rid of that divide and view your job where God has you, no matter what you're doing. That is where God has you. That's your job. That's your work. And so my challenge is to view your work as an opportunity to give a good testimony, not as an opportunity to just get by and make money or to advance your career. Use your opportunity as work to glorify God, to reflect others to Him, to be that good testimony. Work as to the Lord and not for men. Let's pray. Father God, I just thank you so much for your word, Father, and all that you teach us on a daily basis. I pray this week that you would bless each and every person in here. I pray, Lord, that you would help them to go out and shine your light and be a testimony to others for you, Lord. And just help us to be a church and a people that love you and spend time in your word and just growing our relationship with you. And that just fills our heart with the love that only you can give. And that just outflows in the way we work and the way we live, Father. I pray that you be glorified in all that we do and say. In Jesus' name, amen. Have a good week.